Hello, and welcome to Your Creative and Magical Life, which is hopefully your actual life, but is also this podcast, a show that explores how tarot, divination, and spirituality can help us live a life that sparkles with magic and creativity. I'm your host, Cecily Saylor. Let's make some magic. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode. I hope you're doing well. It's been a moment since an episode was broadcast, so thank you for your patience. It's been a busy end of the year, and I'm excited for next year to bring you more wonderful conversations, more microdose episodes. I've got myself, I think, situated for a nice groove with my work, with what I share in 2025, trying not to be too rigid, but also trying to be structured enough that I can do the things I want to do and kind of work the situation I've set up for myself with Typewriter Tarot in 2025. So I appreciate you being with me this year as this podcast launched. Thank you to everyone who's listened, enjoyed an episode, shared an episode. It really helps if you tell folks about this podcast, if you love it. And I always love to hear from you if there's anything you want to share. Today's episode is exploring the Temperance card, card number 14. We are about halfway through the major arcana here. And the Temperance card is a beautiful archetype where we see an angelic figure standing in a river, pouring from one goblet to another. I won't describe it all because we're going to do that in the episode. But a beautiful card of blending, alchemizing, balancing, harmonizing with the energy of the universe, reading the energy and which way it's flowing, kind of putting ourselves in the most easeful place. And I'm really excited to be exploring this card with Natalie Ross, who loves rainbows, which is like a very perfect temperance thing to love. Natalie loves rainbows, bunnies, and plants. And Natalie is a marketing coach who's been called the freeze whisperer because she helps people get out of a freeze state gently, with a lot of support, with a lot of tending for the nervous system. Natalie's work is devoted to helping clients cultivate reciprocal, regenerative connection with the people they serve. Also, a very, just saying that makes me feel like it's a very temperance phrase, very sustaining, very balanced, very beautiful. Natalie's methods blend somatic based nervous system healing, neurodivergent affirming practices, intuitive development, and hands on experience growing audiences and businesses. You can get on her email list at natalie.net, and I'll include that at the end as well. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation with Natalie. Natalie hosted a podcast that I really, really loved. I still love it. It still exists, I think, but it was really beautiful, really a beautiful, powerful show for me. We'll talk about that some as well. I'll stop talking now and let this conversation begin. So I hope you enjoy it. Hello, Natalie. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming to talk with me about the Temperance card.
I'm so grateful. Thank you. Hi. And I feel like we've been kind of in true temperance form, navigating getting to this episode.
Yes, yes. And now we're in the river, we're in the boat, we're flowing with the current. I'd
Hmm.
love to just start for our listeners, talking about the card itself and kind of set the
Mm-hmm.
stage for the rest of the conversation. So I have brought the Temperance card from the Rider-Waite deck, and I also have the Temperance card from the Gentle Tarot because it's so lovely. And maybe we could start with the Rider-Waite version, the Smith Rider. No, I want to say the Smith Waite version. Let me pause and just break that down for a moment because Pamela Coleman Smith was the artist of what's called the Rider-Waite deck. Arthur Waite was the creator and writer, and Rider was the publisher of the deck. So it's long been called Rider-Waite with the publisher and the creator's names, with no mention of the female and Black Creole artist who created the imagery that has become so iconic. But there is a movement, I guess, now where we do say the the Smith Waite deck. So that's where I get confused. Sometimes my tongue wants to mention the publisher, but I think it's nice to call it the Smith Waite deck. So
Hmm.
that's my tongue twister explanation.
Mm-hmm.
With that out of the
Nice.
way, Natalie, what do
Mm-hmm.
you notice about this card? Will you describe what
Oh,
you see?
yeah, thanks. And gosh, I'm so glad that you mentioned the Smith aspect because it's just the imagery is everything, you
Yeah.
know. It's so important.
Yes.
So, I guess the first thing that's drawing my attention is the kind of like golden donut on this um uh being's this angelic being's forehead. It looks like a little golden circle with a dot in the middle, and their head is radiating with spikes of it looks like it's glowing, indicating it's glowing. And from there, I'm seeing just a glow extending beyond that, even. There's like this kind of radiance. And then if I look down and to the, I don't know, about on the left, about 2/3 down, there's a crown, a golden or yellow slash golden crown, like one would wear on their head, with one, two, three, four, five, six spikes. What do you even call those? I don't know. And it's glowing too. And it's over some mountains at the end of a road and glowing. It's like hanging in the sky and glowing. And it's, I mean, it kind of feels like the sun. Can't tell if it's setting or rising. I don't know even know if it is the sun,
Mm-hmm.
but I get this kind of celestial being. There's a lot of celestial energy here, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
so on Earth. Because if we come down further, so they kind of are starting in the heavens and then coming down, and then we come down to the bottom third, and there's like this pond or river, some water body, and the celestial being is standing with one foot on a rock on dry land and one foot with their toes in the water. And on land, there's some golden iris looking things, but who knows? They are reminiscent of irises blooming, and there's green grass. And you can tell the water's got some ripples in it. It's not perfectly still, it's like moving. And then kind of, so my eye goes like from top down to bottom and then back up to the middle where this celestial being is holding two golden goblets. And the one in their left hand is higher than the one in their right hand. And there's water flowing between them, but we don't know, is it flowing up or is it flowing down? Is it like, this is a very, I mean, we would generally think gravity, it's flowing down, but I don't know, I just get that sense of like it's
Because
I don't
they're
know, just
kind
like I
of
got that feeling.
side by side, like they are at a different level, but the lower cup
Mm-hmm.
is not directly beneath the higher cup, which is what we would need to do
Right.
when we're pouring something. It's like kind of
Exactly. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
flowing sideways and down. It's defying the laws of physics a little bit.
Right? Everything about it's like a little bit off. It's like if you just glance at it, you'd be like, oh, they're pouring water down. But when you really look at it, you're exactly right. That's what's off about it. I'm like, wait, it's not just going down. And then there's this red triangle patch on their chest. And then surrounding, their wings are these giant red, feathery looking wings that take up a good portion, probably like a fifth of the whole card,
We can't even
coming out
see
behind them. So yeah, go
the
ahead.
full wingspan. Sorry.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm curious to hear what you are noticing.
Well, I love that you started with the golden donut on the forehead, this like very, maybe one of the smaller details in the card, but this very like central point in the figures, like where the third eye would be. And when you
Mm-hmm.
said golden donut, I noticed, I think for the first time, the golden crown hovering over the mountain. So thank
Mm,
you for helping me
cool.
re-see the card. But yeah, and as listening to you talk as well, it's making me think like, oh, this is a supernatural event. Like this is some kind of transcendent occasion or this moment of eminence where, yeah, the earthly plane and the spiritual plane, I think they're always connected, right? But they become like more visibly joined through this angel's presence. And now that I'm noticing that crown that looks like a sun, that just makes me think of divinity, like mm, the great heraldry of the divine, like encapsulated in this kind of sun energy that's at the center of our solar system. And yeah, I like how you noticed as well the water is moving. This isn't a still pool of water. It's got like energy and movement. I think you did. That was a beautiful description. And maybe I'll show you really
Thanks.
quick the just for a little bit of contrast, the gentle tarot version.
Mm.
I just think it's so lovely. Yeah, what do you see there?
I'm gonna just kind of draw some parallels. So there's a beautiful brown skin female bodied person here standing on a horizontal line that's maybe like, I don't know, not quite two-thirds. It's like just above halfway up, like horizontally on the card.
Mhm.
And behind them is a sun. Is it rising? Is it setting? We don't know, but it's glowing and it's taking up kind of like the wings. It's
Mhm.
taking up this whole space. And I love that you mentioned we don't even see the whole thing. And then the reflection of the sun is seen. So this person's standing on this like horizontal line, which looks like it could be like a tightrope. And again,
Mhm.
it has a sort of and they're naked. Forgot to mention this. Uh, let's just call her a woman for now. This woman is completely naked, and she's standing there with long hair and nice full bush and
Yes.
rosy cheeks, and her hands out. And there's birds on her hands, and there's birds flying around, and the sun's behind her, and then the sky kind of has a gradient from that sun glow to a kind of a green to a blue. And then on either side of this tightrope type thing, whatever this is, are two little blobs of land with purple flowers growing and blooming out of them. And then beneath there is a pond, and it's completely reflecting the sun and the sky. And you can see these sparkles on it, which I love sunlight sparkles on water. So it's like, oh, yeah, the sunlight sparkling on water. And that also indicates movement as well. And there's these three I'm not sure if they're fish or whales or what, but three aquatic beings that are fins pointing down, noses pointing up towards the woman on the tightrope thing. And it really does feel like this connection between world. I mean, there's sky, earth, water, and like sort of celestial. It's multi-dimensional feeling for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
love
what do you
that.
notice?
Um, that was so great. Yeah, I'll just add how the reflection of the water, like the water line, I think kind of does bisect the card and creates
Mm-hmm.
this mirror image so that you almost get this sense of like the whole sun, even though,
Mm-hmm.
half is really the reflection. And then the way the aquatic beings are oriented, it's like they're looking up at this human figure. And it's almost like the animals, the birds are sort of circulating around her too. She seems like the center of attention, certainly to our gaze, and maybe even in the environment at the moment that she's in. And yeah, she's really doing this like balancing act with like two delicate birds perched on each palm or fingertip, and then, yeah, on this tightrope across the water. Yeah, she just looks like she's very skilled, very balanced, very at peace in order to maintain this balance, I think. And perhaps like so radiant in this moment that the animals are drawn to her, or she has a relationship with the animals already. And like this environment is like a place, a piece of land that she's very connected to and has like honored and developed a relationship with. And so it feels like all even the flowers, which are kind of lupine looking, are kind of leaning in her direction as well. So it's almost like compared to the other card, she becomes like the human and angelic collapse together or something, but with no adornment, no like, nods toward like the Christian concept of an angel or something.
Right.
That's what I got.
Yeah, and I can't help but think that okay, if these aquatic beings, let's call them fish for now, they could be other things, and the birds are all look like the birds are on her hands and flying around her, and the fish are looking at her. I'm like, is she throwing out some good treats? Like what's happening here? And I noticed too that there's not neither of them have their own reflections in the water. The Smith Rider Waite doesn't have any reflections in the water, but she's
Ooh.
not reflected in the water in the Gentle Tarot. And both of them have the sun figure, this celestial sun body is not high in the sky, it's towards the horizon. And
Mm.
so it's kind of like neither,
Descending
yeah,
toward
not
Earth.
fully risen, not fully set, whatever. It's, yeah, it's close to the earth.
I love that you notice that she doesn't have a reflection, that neither of them do. That's a big deal. That kind of reinforces that sort of supernatural
Right.
thing where, like you see the ghost in the mirror, but you turn around and like there's nothing behind you, kind of
Right.
thing. Um, okay, well, beautiful descriptions. What does this card mean to you, or how do we take some of these images and turn them into messages or meaning? How do you think about this card?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we've already touched on it with how there's this like earthiness yet supernatural. And this angel isn't out floating in space somewhere, and they're not levitating even. And even this woman is not levitating. She's standing on something. She's balancing on something. They're both balancing on something.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this element of kind of balance, like, and earth, heavens, and then all the connection and like the elements. There's earth, air, fire, water in all of them. And very balanced. Maybe not perfect proportions of all of those in each, but they're all present at least. And the with the sun being, towards the horizon, it's like this all speaks just to the word itself of temperance, of neither deficient nor excessive. It's like this is a kind of balanced place, maybe not static, but like homeostasis, that kind of flowing, and a lot of flow. I think flow comes to
Mm-hmm.
mind, because that water flowing
Mm-hmm.
from cup to cup, maybe back and forth. Who knows? We don't know. This is supernatural. The water flowing in both the cards and the bodies of water. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear kind of what comes up for you.
Yeah, I think those you hit on some of the big elements, the flow, the balance, and temperance too. Like to temper metal is to combine it with something else. I believe, this like element of alchemy of like transforming something into something else. And I'll just note as well that this card follows the death card. So it's like, you want to pay attention to that, like after this experience of loss, or yeah, just an ending that's very challenging, most likely. Of course, there's grief associated with that. And then that experience that I think, even if we're experiencing death from still the perspective of being alive, we've lost someone we love, or something in our life has had its death, we like automatically are kind of flattened, I think, in some way by that, even as our emotional state really becomes almost overwhelming. I think to like hold the feeling of love or feel the feeling of grief with the feeling of love and loss. And then this card emerges as like a new horizon. And I'm noticing now, just as we're talking about it, how this is kind of an image maybe of the afterlife, like that supernatural element. And when like people experience spiritual encounters with lost loved ones here on earth, on the earthly plane, sometimes with a visitation of a bird, or in like in an actual spiritual like an apparition, or sometimes through like music playing, or you smell the perfume, or you smell the cigarettes they always smoked, or whatever. And this reminder that like death isn't the ending or the finality. It doesn't have the full finality that we think of, or that we experience emotionally. And that on the other side of it, like that, like death is an alchemical process. And on the other side of that, we have some recalibration, I think, in our lives. Like when something is removed and it's so meaningful, we really reckon with like what matters to us, and what we want to live for. And this card feels to me like kind of the recalibration, the finding of balance, the saying like, oh yeah, I only have, I don't know how much time on earth, so I want to use it like this instead of the way that I've been using it. Yeah, that's what comes up
I'm
for me.
just taking that in. Oh, yeah, I love that. Hmm. Right. I think on a spiritual journey, there's so much shedding and death,
Mm,
and it never stops. And it's
yes.
layers and layers. And it's like, okay, when is this ever going to end? And then eventually, I know for myself, I'm like, oh, this doesn't end. It just keeps going. So, how do I kind of live and die without being dead to life in this weird
Mm.
way? Yeah.
Ooh, good. So good. Gonna write that down.
It's not easy or fun all the time.
No.
But I think too, I love that you mentioned how it comes after the death card, which death is 13 as well, which has been such a vilified number. And um, you know, in with connections, we won't get into the whole history of it, but like with connections to the 13 moons and potent the potency of women who bleed 13 times with with each moon and as it cycles through, and like 13's been so vilified. And I think it's interesting that death falls on 13. I don't know. There's like I'll have to listen to your death episode whenever it's out. Hear what y'all talk about.
Well,
Is
yeah,
it out?
it is out.
All right.
Yeah, and for folks who heard that one, I spoke with a death doula who experienced
Oh,
who lived through Hurricane Helene, and
wow.
Mara June does beautiful writing about just grief and the alchemy of grief and creativity on the other side of grief. And they've just started a new series on like enchantment. And Mara June was writing about how the neighbors came out the day after the storm and stood in front of the river that had come through and destroyed so much of the town. And they just stood there kind of silently in awe of all that had changed.
Mm,
And there was this kind of stillness and this peace to it, even though there had been so much destruction. And that's coming to me now in relation to this card that just felt like a temperance moment
mhm.
where it's like, oh, there's like the divine powers are so much greater than we are, and they can destroy, they can create, and our worlds can change and we can change. And just it's a lot to take in. And I maybe temperance is that, like, grappling with the enormity of the divine.
Oh, yeah, the peace. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that feels really important because that's something that I was noticing in these cards too, is they're both very peaceful feeling. And it's not like jubilant, but it's, I don't know, I guess the birds are kind of jubilant. But like the peace and just speaking to that, like after the ending of something, no matter how difficult or sad it was to go through that, I know for myself, I find often a moment, maybe it's not immediate, but I love this example of people going out after the rivers come through and then swept away their lives as they knew it. And here they are, this kind of peace after the storm, and this just mm, like, okay, even in the grief, in the loss, in the death, there's a moment here, and it doesn't mean joy necessarily, but it means peace. Like after someone who's been battling with an illness for a long time passes, and it's so sad, but then there's also this relief, this and a surrender of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
I really like this piece. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, as you're talking too about the piece, I'm also thinking about like the radiance in this
Hmm.
card. There's something like bright and shining. And then as you were talking as well, it made me think about in the sun card, I mean, in the death card, there's a similar pathway leading away to the distance, and there's two towers that the pathway moves through. There are towers that we also see in the moon card, but between the towers, I believe, is a sun that is like more at sunset or sun, like it's closer to the horizon. And here in this card, it's like come up above the earth and is now this crown, this like glorious something, we could say. We're not reading it as like imperialism crown, but
No. No, indicative of, I think, I mean, there's so many meanings we can read into that beyond imperialism, right?
for sure.
Um, and I think this, okay, what you just said too speaks so much to my own personal experience of like how grateful I am for temperance because so much of my life has been influenced by tower moments. And I feel like, with that kind of, I feel like tower, okay, it's unavoidable. We're going to have tower moments, we're going to have death. And yet, in some of my own personal tower moments, if I had been more willing to notice what was happening and engage with the world, myself, whatever was unfurling in those moments leading up to it, it might have been able to have been tempered. But instead, it didn't, and it turned into a tower moment. And I'm not saying that's shameful or blame myself or anything. That's just part of my own personal evolution. And looking back, I'm in my 40s now, so I can see like, oh, I've been through so many of these tower moments and death moments that I have I've learned how to notice the so many of the indicators of imbalance before they get so far that it leads to tower or destruction and death, and can instead engage, even if it's scary or difficult, and temper it, literally temper it, right? Like literally like soft, not let it get to that extreme, come back to that homeostasis or balance, which doesn't mean the same, but means, okay, something has been in excess or deficit. I've either been excessively putting my energy here or not putting enough energy there, or attention or whatever, or nutrition or exercise or what, like we could go at literally anything.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, how do I need to tend to something that's been running wild or neglected? And I think that's such a lesson of that has allowed temperance to emerge as an experience personally. I don't know. Do you have that? Have you? I mean, we've like I feel like tower is so prominent, and I don't know. Yeah, tell me about your tower to temperance journey.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, like what happens with the death card and temperance kind of gets repeated with the tower and the star. And yeah, in the tower, there's this edifice exploding and people falling to their deaths and old structures dying. And in the star, similarly, there's a body of water. We're back in nature. Um, there's that kind of harmony and equalization or recalibration happening. And there's also a pouring going on in the star and in temperance. And this kind of like ritualized um, changing of some energy into some other kind of energy, or using elements as a way of honoring some aspect of life, perhaps. And I don't have like an immediate, I have plenty of tower moments for sure. That would be like 3 more episodes.
Right.
But one thing I say about this card when it comes up for people is, or one metaphor is just, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but like the river of life, like seeing life like a river. Like we are in this current of energy that's moving us forward through this construct of time. And we spend a lot of time trying to control how that goes and how we are and who we are, and participating in the constructed world for our own sense of belonging and security and safety. And when death happens or when tower moments happen, then we have this realization, or a new level of realization, that we can't control all that much except for ourselves, and that life is happening beyond our wishes and our will, and it's kind of moving us forward through these different experiences. And so temperance is an invitation to like surrender to that flow, that river of life. Like we, sometimes we're like trying to be like, I don't want to be in a river. I'm trying to get to the top of that mountain. but all I have is this boat. And like walking up a mountain with a boat is not super great use of energy versus like getting in the river and letting the river take you somewhere and kind of like you said, surrendering to where the energy is moving. And I also say, it might be a time to like think about where energy is actually flowing in your life and where it's blocked and where you might be trying to like push something forward that doesn't want to move forward versus there's an open door over here where you can just pass through easily at will. And yeah, I think I don't know, that's what comes up in response to
Mm-hmm.
your comment. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we've talked sufficiently about the card and we'll continue to talk about the card, and I want to talk about you. And I just want to say that I first discovered you and your work when you were doing the Earth Speak podcast. And I think this was in like early year or two of the pandemic. When did Earth
Mm.
Speak start?
I've been podcasting since 2016. And the Earth Speak emerged 2019, but really took off 2020.
Okay.
We were like right place, right time for
Yeah.
that to just, yeah, that was an interesting journey.
Yeah. And that podcast meant so much to me. And I've heard you talk about, I don't know if we'll get into this, but I've heard you talk about how like your own wish for the podcast at that time was that it would just kind of like pop up in people's like phones and
It
mysteriously.
did. It wasn't even
Yeah.
my wish, really. It was like people would tell me, I don't know how this podcast got on my phone, but it just started playing. I'd be like, what? Like that blew my mind. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cool. And as a nature loving person, a nature caring person, and someone who was really beginning, I mean, it's been a longer journey of like ongoing awareness about human impact on the earth, simultaneous to discovering what magic and relationship to the earth have to do with each other. Like, I think magic is rooted in all the elements that the earth provides us, and like having a relationship with the land that is not just extractive or utilitarian, is a path toward like magic and understanding spirit. And your podcast would bring on these amazing guests and magical workers and healers who, worked with the earth in different kinds of ways. And I want to share as well that one of my favorite or most memorable episodes was the one with Joe Hollis, who kind of stands out among all the guests. A lot of your guests are kind of like younger, hipper, like doing kind of like, modern magical stuff. And Joe Hollis is this older guy who lives in the woods and knows all the plants and is an herbalist and a permaculturist. And he said in that podcast episode has become kind of like maybe my life mantra. He said, I use my life to develop a better way of living on earth. Is that how I'm jumbling it a little bit?
Something like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use my life to develop a better way of living on earth. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So anyway, that's how I found you.
Wow.
And I was a big fan. And then I ended up in a coaching group that you were also part of. And at that point, you had shut down Earth Speak and a community that had really flourished around it. And you had done some somatic work in your own life to kind of reconnect or retune your nervous system in certain ways. And you were starting to bring that work, that nervous system work, into a marketing space. And like, how can we run small businesses or healing businesses from a place of nervous system regulation? So, really flowing from like one thing to another and blending some different experiences and elements. And of course, you were doing things before Earthspeak happened. But my question at the end of all of this is maybe how you're thinking about if you're in the boat in the river of life, like where you are in that journey now, and maybe what feels meaningful or interesting or astonishing to you from this present moment about any part of the past and arriving here.
Thanks. And also, I just want to mention how grateful I am that I listened to my very random, I'm near Joe Hollis, I should go interview him impulse.
Yes,
And that
thank
was like
you.
not planned in advance. And then shortly after that, his library burned down.
Oh my God.
And then not long after that, he died.
Mm,
I'm sorry. But that just struck me as like how impermanent everything is and how grateful I am that I had enough capacity and agency and resource to be like, I'm going to go meet this person and film his beautiful space and see if I can interview him. And it was like something I'd been wanting to do for maybe 10 years. And
wow.
I had been living maybe 4 hours from him for so long and never visited. And it wasn't till I had moved all the way across the country to the West Coast and happened to be right like within an hour of him that I was like, I better go. And just I feel like that's so yeah. I just love the to encourage people to notice and follow those sort of, I don't know, out
Those
of nowhere
nudges.
impulses. Yeah,
Yeah.
the nudges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think this comes back to the temperance card, your question,
Yes, we will circle
because
back to it all throughout.
not surprisingly, because growing, I don't know, so much of my life up until the last 5, 10 years has been trying and failing to uh, achieve to push that boat up the mountain according to society standards, according to what I thought I had to do in order to survive, much less really feel alive, you know? And in that, as with so many people, it's just like, I have had some undiagnosed chronic conditions that I was always grappling with that no one ever noticed or, was able to accommodate. And just like always, just it was hard. And just like being like, what's wrong with me?
Mhm.
Why is it so hard for me to just be an adult, to be a human, to function in this world? And even as I moved closer and closer to trying to function in this world and quote succeed, doing things that I loved more and more, and like even making my podcast and making that community and having such a beautiful impact on so many lives and having that impact me back, it was still all within this still heavily influenced by the unconscious and automatic impulse to appease whatever systemic powers that be said that I had to do, in order to be worthy and successful and well and survive and not die alone and miserable in a, you know, cold, dark place with no one around me. And it's like, I don't know, it's dramatic, but I
But
think that
everyone's fear, truly.
everyone's right. And I think to me, so much of temperance has come from so many things, but two that pop up for right now are really truly coming to take an expanded view and see how I was trying to push that boat up the mountain rather than flow in the river. And by adhering to, you know, I mean, surviving in this system that does not want us to thrive. It
Mm.
literally is designed and to extract from us and from the earth, and it is designed to keep us never in balance, to always keep us in excess or deficiency. And there's literally no winning at it.
Mm.
It's an impossible game. And that's maddening. And I think that's taken me down many existential crises and a lot of grief, not only in my own life, but just for what that means for people and planet on so many levels, in so many places, in so many ways. Like it's an unstoppable force that we all live with,
Yeah.
and it sucks.
Yes.
It sucks. Um, and I think that's flattened me. That's
Mm.
thrown me into deep depression. It's thrown me into hyperdrive, motivation, trying to do enough or do more to overcome it. And I think finally my own kind of death in this journey is the like acceptance that I cannot be separate from this system. I cannot make the system go away. I have to live within it. And yet I have to also do my, like, bring alive whatever it is, tend to whatever it is that I can in whatever ways that are, mm, that bring aliveness for me and for others, despite the constant extraction and excess and deficiency. And um yeah, is this making sense too? Yeah, because I'm using like such broad terms.
Yes, it is making sense. And I think you encapsulated that struggle beautifully that I think so many of us feel. And I love how you come at the end of that to, and maybe we find this in the temperance card with the radiance of the sun, with the
Mhm.
flowing of the water, just this like scene of life, of just like exist, like this is life. The plants grow, the water flows, the birds fly, the fish swim, like we're all in this. What we're really in is this web of life and not just a system, but the system is so dominant over our minds and our bodies that it's really hard to remember that. And I love how you frame it, where it's like, I think the resistance to the system that we cannot destroy individually is to claim the things that we love and to try to live into those things as much as we can, to just because I think that's what everything in this card is doing, is like it's doing what it loves to do. Like the flower loves to bloom, the
Mhm.
water loves to flow, the birds love to fly, and like
Mhm.
um and these
This
beings
woman loves
come
standing naked on a beam.
surrounded by
I
animals,
love
which like I love
it.
to. Can I have that?
Me too.
um yeah, and the angel like loves to alchemize, I guess, or to like transform, or to help awaken through some kind of like tempering and transformation. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious where this river of life, this journey for you of, like struggling within the system and seeking success, but also trying to hold on to like a heartfelt mission. Where has that brought you now? And what, yeah, what's up these days? What is Natalie doing?
Wow. Um, how do I even I think can I touch on the kind of nervous system piece in all of this?
Of
Because I
course.
didn't, yeah, I'm thinking about that. That's what's coming to mind is like, um, I think on this like path to temperance and embodiment of temperance and relationship with temperance has been a journey that's taken me into my own nervous system and my own trauma. And I know these are like buzzwords and things that are all popular now, which I love. I'm all for that. Um, but I'll kind of outline in my own words here, like um, systemically, right? The system's always just trying to have more, more, more. We always like it is not set up to promote balance, to promote everyone and everything having what they need and being able to give of their capacity to give and then receive what they need and take rest and be active. It's not set up for that.
Mm,
And in that, part of what keeps that system going is the way that it has systematically and intentionally created so much unconscious, deep patterns of fear that if we veer from that way of being, that we will suffer, we will die. We will come close to death, but not have the sweet relief of death and just suffer, 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 suffer.
mm,
And that fear that lives in our nervous systems, that lives in this deep, unconscious, automatic reaction that is foundational to every other experience we have in any given moment to whatever's happening in our nervous systems um, kind of filters what we're capable of thinking or feeling, what kind of actions we're capable of taking, what kind of choices we're capable of making. So if we're in a fear state, we're not capable of thinking as creatively or freely. And, we aren't feeling generous and loving. We're thinking, I got to protect my survival. And this is happening. Like, this is such an innate drive. This isn't something that we can just consciously control. And that I think is so powerful because that like our nervous system, the system has hooked into our own nervous systems to make us believe and feel like if we don't um, appease the system, if we don't do what it says and follow the rules and play its game, then we are going to suffer. We're going to die. And this is so, 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 so deeply entrenched. I mean, looking back, hundreds of years at the dissolution of the commons in Europe, and we see, the people who are wanting to make more. I know this just took like quite a turn, but like I just want to highlight how um
the river
the
curves
the river curves,
randomly this way and that,
right?
you know?
Right. But the commons, there was a way where okay, you live, maybe it's not the most amazing, easy life, but you still have a sort of social support network. You still have, um, even as you age and are no longer capable of, farming or hunting or whatever, you're still going to be taken care of. People have access to common lands. People have
Mm,
it's a more local economy. It's a different world. I don't know all the details of it, but it's definitely something I encourage people to look into and study. And with that came, okay, there's suddenly wool has become commodified, and suddenly we have more um, easier international trade and national, like there suddenly these markets emerge where, oh, we can actually get more for ourselves, like the people who are kind of at the top and have power and control within this system, they can realize they can have more power for themselves, more money, more this, more that, if they take away the commons and use it to graze more sheep so they can have more wool and sell this hot commodity on the market. And in order to do that, they had to, you know, there was people,
Seize the land,
seize the land. People didn't like that, and
privatize it.
especially,
Yeah.
right, privatize it. And this is kind of the birth of the negative image of the witch. And
Yes.
from this, you can imagine old women who have been completely like had their support network taken away from them, their ability to function and survive and thrive taken away from them. And now they're also being villainized intentionally by the people who've taken it away and being pointed at as the scapegoat, as the reason why bad things are happening to people. And this is such a simple, this is like, I just want to say this is such a simplified version of this. But I think, the women had to become beggars. They had to go door to door knocking and begging. And from that, they also resisted and revolted. And from that came this idea, I think, of they, oh, my fields were cursed by this witch. And so, she cursed that, it's her fault. And so they were this perfect scapegoat for anything and everything. And not only that, like they were intentionally villainized. And not only that, but then if they were, they would be punished. They would be publicly punished and
Mm-hmm.
tortured. And, not just burning, but like contraptions and
Yes.
all horrible, disgusting things. And this still continues to this day. It's not like this is like a pattern. This is like a game. This is like a playbook of
Yeah.
the system in a way of like, okay, how do we take from someone or something and for someone else to gain from that, and then villainize those that we've taken from. So this is just repeats and repeats and repeats in so many different forms. And I just wanted to point that out because, like, this fear goes so far back, and it's so, like, if you go learn about this, you will be just viscerally like, oh, it's so deeply entrenched. And in order to survive, people, especially women, did have to conform. They did have to give up their agency, their autonomy, their sovereignty, their whatever. They had to play by the rules. And if they didn't, there were dire consequences. And that fear is still living in our nervous systems, in our bodies. And, rightfully so. It helped us survive. It did. Um, but there's also more room and more space now to maybe break some of those rules without suffering as dire consequences. And that's where I think that's one way temperance comes in for me, is like, okay, how can I, because you ask, where am I now? Well, over the years, I've been slowly pushing those edges and testing the water, so to say, of like, okay, based on my abilities, based on my access to resources, based on my advantages, whatever, like how might I be able to not do what I'm supposed to do or not be what I'm supposed to be? And what are the consequences? And I've just been kind of testing that, and maybe not even consciously. It's just something that lives in me. I think probably lives in many people.
Yeah.
And just like, little by little. And sometimes I faced really dire consequences. It was really tough. And sometimes I realized, oh, wait, there's some more freedom here. And I think a huge part of this, a lot of this shifted and changed for me. And just like, that's kind of what led me on my intuitive journey. That's what led me to develop my psychic senses. That's what led me to meditation practice. From there, I started my podcast and then started this online community, and we brought in teachers to teach workshops and stuff. And that's when I was introduced to somatic therapy and introduced to the nervous system and introduced to trauma. And I didn't know any of this stuff in 2020. And learning it blew my mind. I was like, this is the piece that grounds all of this etheric, energetic, subtle stuff that I've been studying and living. It grounds it into everyday reality. And it explains why I have such intense limits on my own capacity, despite not being limited externally in certain ways, because my nervous system was so fearful of certain things that it would literally prevent me from doing things. Like, okay, I'm being very vague. So um my nervous system had very, you know, very twisted fear of earning money. It was like, if you earn any money, Natalie, you are going to be miserable and die. You and like I would only be able, up and I could generate money. My membership was quite successful and I paid my people, I paid everyone else, but I could not physically, viscerally could not pay myself because I was like, you know what? This work is too important to me. I'm going to just keep working as long as I can without, taking taking as little money as I can, because that's the only way it's going to be sustainable for me. Because if I take money, then I like literally shut down in my body and I don't have control over that. Like, why can't I just function like a normal human and get paid? And I would literally like go into freeze mode and shut down and go into numbness, dissociation, like terror, like blunted feelings and sensations, fatigue. Like, that's freeze. That's a nervous system response to protect against a threat. When the nervous system doesn't feel like it can fight or flee or appease, it goes freeze. It's like a last ditch effort to survive this threat. And like the potential of earning any money beyond like minimum wage terrified my unconscious automatic nervous system reactions. And that was debilitating, as one might imagine, in a system like this, because we have to earn money. So that's something I had been grappling with. And coming out of that, oh, I don't know, I'm going to pause there, and just because I feel like I've been kind of meandering, and just want to pause there and see, just check in.
Hello again. It's me interrupting our show momentarily because I want to invite you into a creative and magical community. It's called the Creative Magic Collective. I'm your host, and it's a beautiful community of creative spirits, creative mystics who come together to reflect, to explore tarot, to create together, to learn together about the magical and creative arts. This is the next evolution of our community at Typewriter Tarot, and it's open. You are welcome. I would love for you to be part of it. What you get when you join the Creative Magic Collective is a weekly free gathering. That's either a journaling session where we come together, we reflect. You get the Tarot for Creative Spirits workbook, which is full of amazing journaling prompts. So sometimes people are journaling in the workbook. You can use your own journaling practices. Sometimes I am journaling through tarot spreads that I've done as a way to integrate them. Our weekly gatherings are also sometimes a create session where we come together and work on our creative projects, whether you're writing a novel, knitting, writing poems, writing a newsletter, drafting an outline for your podcast. Whatever your creative practice may be, this is just a space to do it in community. So we're not always doing it alone. And then we also have another of our weekly gatherings is our tarot office hours. So that's where we practice. We bring our tarot practice, we ask questions, we try new things, we read for each other sometimes. So there's one live gathering every week, and it's going to be one of those three things: journaling, creating, tarot office hours. And then every month, we also have a workshop where we're learning with me or learning with an amazing guest teacher. In January, our workshop is about setting intentions with the year of the hermit. That's our card for 2025. In February, we have a beautiful guided self-love ritual and practice with Maria Minnis, who you heard on the Justice episode and who is the author of Tarot for the Hard Work. We'll be doing a workshop on rebelling against the tyranny of time. We have nature poetry. We'll be exploring the history of witchcraft, the history of tarot. We'll be doing our astrological natal charts through tarot cards. That's a thing you can do. And we'll have a creative coven gathering for summer solstice and winter solstice. So all of these monthly workshops are included. When they happen, they're recorded, they're added to a learning library that you also have access to. And that learning library contains workshops I've hosted over the last 3 or 4 years. So there's a series on tarot for your novel. There's a bunch of creative covens for every season. There are workshops on all of the suits in the tarot. There's a tarot for writers workshop. There's a workshop on leadership with the queens and kings of the tarot. There's a workshop on animals of the tarot. So it's a beautiful, growing, rich assortment of workshops that range from tarot to creativity to writing. And you get access to all of that, including some additional meditations. Our tarot office hours will be recorded and added there. And all of this is hosted in a platform called Circle, where we can also converse with each other and connect outside of gatherings. And all of this is meant to be non-linear, as in you can come to what you want and not come to whatever you can't come to or don't feel like coming to. And there's no problem with that. You don't miss anything. You don't fall behind. This is an assortment of different workshops, gatherings, accountability, community that you can use as you like to fit your life. So you come to what you want. You can't fall behind. You can't get lost. You can come in and out. This also includes a coaching session with me every 6 months. So that's 75 minutes where you and I get together. We can pull cards. We can explore something that's coming up for you in your journaling or creative practice. And I created this community because I think there are a lot of us who don't have a really solid, vibrant community that supports our magic, our witchiness, our woo-ness, our mysticality. I made that up. So this is a space where you can find that. And the community now is incredible. There are therapists, there are coaches, there are writers, there are nurses, there are engineers, there are moms, there are childless cat and dog ladies, there are poets and teachers, there are freelance writers. There are all kinds of incredible people. We have an amazing sense of humor. We love animals. We love nature. We talk about that too. We have some retired folks who are in the community. We have some people in their 20s. We've got people all the way in between. Right now it's about a little under 30 people. So it's still a relatively small community, nice and cozy. And the price to join is $77 a month. Because again, you have something every week. You get a coaching session with me. I'm going to send you the workbook. It's a lot of support. It's the whole library, all that stuff. You can go to my website and look for Creative Magic Collective to read through all the details, to see some testimonials. If you decide to sign up for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, you're going to save a bit more money. So, yeah, I would love to see you there. If you're looking for something that can support you in the coming year with a community of people who share your love of creativity, your interest in magic, your love for tarot, we are here for you. If you have questions, you can reach out. Let me know. And if you're like, hey, lady, I've just been listening to your podcast a couple times. I don't know you. I'm not ready to commit to like a whole community. I get that. The thing you can do if you want to is just go to my website and sign up for the newsletter. And when you do that, you're going to get the first 3 journaling prompts from the workbook, Tarot for Creative Spirits. So you can start there. Let's get back to the episode and continue our exploration. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and sharing that in this way. And everyone with a nervous system should be able to relate to this. And I think 2 things are coming up. One is that the somatic concept or understanding of ourselves biologically and how that impacts our thoughts, our thinking, our whole system. The nervous system is basically like, I hate kind of going to a technology metaphor, but is sort of like the motherboard, the operating system of our being. And when we struggle, there's these experiences like when you get into your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and you're trying to like grow and evolve, where cognitively why you have certain tendencies, like maybe because of something that happened in your family or this other traumatic event, or you have some theory about it anyway, and you want to change it, but you sort of keep doing the same thing. And then you're like, why am I doing this? I know better than this. Like, here I am again. And the answer is your nervous system. It's so powerful. It's running everything and has, it seems, some like direct channel to unconscious buried material, and we operate from that sometimes, a lot of the time, when but like
All
going
the
in
time.
all the time, yes, morning, noon,
Yes.
and night. And but as you have done, like discovering how we can work with the body and with the nervous system, rather than trying to change it with our minds or force ourselves to do something that feels so uncomfortable. It really is about going deeper into the body and working with that. And then another thing occurred to me just because you were sharing. I'm so glad you shared this piece of history about the privatization of land and the loss of the commons. And I think in modern parlance, it's kind of talked about as these third spaces where people can gather. I don't think that covers everything, but I think it's like a piece of this like these third spaces where people can gather, like Central Park.
Right.
Or in Europe, there still are many of them, even though there's far fewer than there used to be. But like as things just become more privatized, we have less and less and less and less of that, and this isolation that comes up. And it almost makes me think, just listening to your story about the like revulsion or the repulsion to getting paid, it almost makes me think like maybe your body remembers this history where it's like the grab for money meant suffering for so many people. And it's like to participate in the acquisition of more wealth for yourself was to sort of be complicit in that. And I think unconsciously for me, that's something I grapple with. Like, I could talk shit about capitalism all day. I don't think every fucking thing about it is terrible, or like theoretically it may not be terrible, but the way it's practiced is very, very problematic. So I can be like intellectually very critical of it, but I still have to live in it. And yeah, there is some part of me too that like doesn't want to, it's like to participate is wrong, but I also have no choice. And it's like such a
Right.
dilemma, such a paradox that it would naturally create freeze. Like, well, if I can't accept it, but I'm still afraid of not having enough of it, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? You know?
Exactly. What the fuck?
So it's rough out
Yeah.
there. And yeah, with that, maybe reflection or commentary, is there anything you want us to know about your present, or like where does that bring you
Yeah.
today?
So I think from that, I immediately so we brought in 2020, early 2020, mid 2020, we had Luis Mojica, which people probably are familiar with. He did one of our first workshops at Earth Speak, and it was a somatic therapy workshop. And that's where I learned about it. And I was like, wow. And I immediately went and got a somatic therapist. And holy good Lord, man. It was just like slow but steady untangling and unweaving. And, 4 years later, 4.5 years later, I'm not at a place where I'm like, oh my God, I make 6 figures now, 7 figures, and I have no problems in my nervous system with money. Actually, I think what's happened is um, I first came out of freeze. It took a while. It took a good 18 months of consistent
Wow.
therapy.
Yeah.
I had some deep freeze. I was in deep freeze, okay? And freeze is one of the toughest places to come out of, especially if you've been there a long time and that's your nervous system's like kind of primary response. Because we don't get to, first of all, I just think it's important to highlight too, we don't consciously choose what is a threat to our nervous system and what isn't. And we don't consciously choose whether to respond with fight, flight, appease, or freeze. These are
Mm.
all unconscious automatic reactions that happen in an instant. And that's why it can be so frustrating because, like, okay, somatic therapy for me was the bridge to relationship with that. I'm not in charge of it, but I now have a conscious relationship with the ability to to be able to be in dialogue with my body, to understand the language that it's speaking when it is feeling threatened, and to understand how I need to speak to it, and not in words but in actions, environments, and connections, to help it feel like the threat has passed, the threat is over, it is now safe enough to emerge again. So much of my own somatic journey, of my own healing journey, was first of all, even feeling safe enough to feel safe, which is like weird sounding, but like safety itself feels like such a threat when one has been in such a high threat response for so long. And coming out of that, so I just want to like highlight this was like 18 months before I came to a place where instead of living in mostly freeze, I had like upgraded to more of a fight flight, and even some, like, it's called ventral, we'll call it like safe and secure connection mode. And it was like I had a rebirth in a way. And I was like, this is what it can feel like to be alive. Like I had not ever experienced that kind of aliveness. I had experienced thrills, I had experienced fun and joy and pleasure and all this, but not this certain type of wellness and ease and peace like I see here in Temperance of, oh, wow. And it wasn't a place that I lived and stayed in, but it was a place that I got to touch, a place where our nervous systems feel safe enough that they don't have to be fighting or running from anything or appeasing or freezing. They can actually be engaged and connected with the world. And that's such a great place to be in. And it's something that it's really difficult to explain or describe because our world does not is not optimized for that. Our world does not value that space. Our world values being in fight, flight, so that we keep trying harder, pushing more, getting to achieve, because we have to pay the bills, we have to pay this. Like, it's very real. And yet the world does, we are not, our system and for most people, the families that were brought up in this state of safety and connection is not one that is cultivated or even known about oftentimes.
Mm.
And it's amazing. It's a feeling of aliveness. And from this, I touched it, and then I kept tending this, and it grew, and my nervous system's automatic reaction and kind of primary reaction shifted more towards fight or flee, which is such an upgrade from freeze. And I was able to experience more time connected space. And I was able to come back to it after feeling threatened. Like, oh, instead of being always in freeze, which we could say is such an excess or a deficiency, it's on such a far end of the spectrum. My nervous system was able to come more towards the center, and just like in temperance, and move and flow through these states that are more harmonious. I mean, fight, flight, appease, there's still like activation, but they help us survive, and they are so much. Oh, I just don't like saying there's such an upgrade from freeze. And I think being able to come back to the peace, despite, that in itself, being able to even arrive at the peace and then come back to it once it's been disrupted. It's not like I'm clinging to it, but I feel like my nervous system has gone from such extremes to this like yummier, more buffered equilibrium type of space where I can flow with whatever life is bringing me. I'm not afraid of what's going to come my way, because that unconscious automatic pattern has been shifted towards knowing, towards a better ability to discern what is and isn't a threat, and towards knowing, remembering how to return back to that safety and to notice when things are actually safe and come back to that space. And I didn't even have that capacity before. And now it's not like, okay, now I'm winning better at capitalism. No. What's emerged from that is that I have the capacity to say, I don't give a fuck about so many of the things that capitalism told me I had to give a fuck about. And I have actually kind of uprooted my entire life and went and lived on a farm, a flower and sheep farm, incidentally, sheep.
She
That
laughs joyously. I uprooted my entire,
yeah.
yeah. I love it.
In a cabin, no power and no plumbing. And I was like, there were other people that were living there, creative, very talented, kind people, and just realizing this is what's so nourishing to me. My wiring, it doesn't even want to put any energy towards trying to succeed according to, these capitalist standards. I don't want to. I know the game's rigged, and I don't want to try to win it because I know there's no winning. What winning is to me is experiencing this aliveness and connection with people and places and myself and spirit and the world in a totally different way than I was brought up to value, or didn't even know was a possibility. And still, it's an unfolding journey for me. I mean, I feel like this is where that kind of third eye, that golden donut comes in, where it's like, I don't have a life plan. My life plan is continue to listen to the aliveness of the moment and follow that, because I trust that continues to feed more aliveness for me and those around me. And that aliveness in itself is such a resistance to the system. It's reminding people that they do have some agency. Not to say that they should have more power or make better choices or do anything. Like the system's fucking tightly wound
Mm.
around us and in us.
Mm.
But just even being that, let's see, just being that in the world and in my own world and with the people that I work with, and providing an example of that and speaking of this alternative possibility and kind of highlighting like, okay, here's some of the reasons why you might feel like it's so hard to be human and be blaming yourself, but actually it's not your fault. And here's how we can kind of soften some of that self-blame for things that aren't actually your fault. Well, that brings so much space, that creates so much space for more aliveness. And that aliveness then, like that third eye donut here, allows us to see new possibilities. And then this is like it's like a upward spiral instead of a
Mm.
downward spiral. And I'm not in like, oh my God, I'm like right now I'm in a city. I'm in a city that is very much uh part of everything. We're not going to escape the system. We're not going to be free from the system. I still have to make money. I still have to engage in commerce, but it's not the same. I don't have the same relationship with it anymore. I'm doing, I'm living in service of aliveness despite the pressures against it. So yeah, I
Mm.
think that's that.
Wow. That, thank you for all of that. So beautiful. I think it's so reassuring. I feel something soften in me. I mean, these are things
Mm.
I believe. Hearing you articulate it in your voice, in your way, is refreshing. It brings more aliveness like into me. It's a like emphasis for me on something I believe and think about, but because of my nervous system, struggle to fully embrace when, you're checking your bank accounts and your mortgage payment is due
Oh
and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
you're working for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
there's no like guaranteed income. Um yeah, so I just celebrate the hard work of that, of like the reclaiming and of getting intimate with your nervous system. I think it's really scary for people to, because it is uncomfortable. And I think I've heard, and maybe you can confirm this as you are more of a student of the nervous system than I am, but that when you come out of freeze, you actually have to like move through activation, which would explain your fight flight
Yep, that's that fight flight.
before
Mm-hmm.
you can come
Mm-hmm.
into a regulated state. So it's not even just like unfreezing or thawing into regulation. It's like, no, you still have to
Mm-hmm.
like ride this roller coaster to the top. And then, like,
It's intense, y'all.
yeah, yeah. So I
Right? And
celebrate you.
yeah, thanks. And I do want to name like this work is scary because you're literally interfacing with that fear. And I have like a million more things to say about temperance and that, because temperance is the path of that, going all the way into the most hurt, like painful place is just going to create more collapse in the nervous system. And so tempering with just a little bit, like the temperance is the language of the nervous system. It's such a
Yeah.
powerful, powerful force. And yeah, yeah. So like it is scary because it's literally interfacing with those fears that are so hardwired into us that say, if I don't do this thing, or if I do this thing, I will die. My survival is at risk. Like you're literally coming closer, turning towards that and engaging with it. And that's freaking scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just
And
want to name it isn't all
mm,
rainbows and butterflies over here.
by no means. No. Yeah, and I love that. I just like the temperance as the nervous system. And like if we take the river of life metaphor, there are patches of the river that are very tumultuous, lots of rapids. There are probably some
Mhm.
waterfalls. And then there are phases of the river that are very peaceful and very tranquil. And, in our boat, in our body, we have to like navigate them one way or the other. And I feel like temperance is that teacher that can help us, like, yes, I'm in activation. Yes, I'm in freeze. Um, but there's more awareness for like where I can put my oar or how I can slow the boat down or how I can find a little bit of regulation in the midst of all of this. And like, yeah, moving through life with an ability to sort of not regulate yourself every second and like stay in this like equilibrium Zen space. That's not possible.
Right. Right.
But
No, that's not the goal.
yeah, but to move through it
Mhm.
without like the full shutdown or like, losing weeks and months of your life to burnout or, not that there's any shame around that either. Like I've learned
Mhm.
plenty of lessons the hardest way. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think
but
to be able to even experience aliveness, you know, for me,
yeah,
if I feel like if I had come to anytime I get to experience my aliveness, I'm grateful. It's like, oh,
that's
this
why we're
is
here.
this is yeah, and this is something that is trying to be channeled into systems of power structures that don't really want us to have our aliveness for ourselves. And I think that there's so much to say. I mean, this is what drives me. So,
Yeah. And I think the systems put this feeling of aliveness on the other side of an infinite
exactly. It's the
number of
carrot.
gates. Yes, exactly. So like
Mm-hmm.
every
It's an impossible
advertisement,
game to win.
yeah, every
Yep.
advertisement we
Yep.
see and that our children see is designed to reinforce that idea that yeah, it's possible. If you don't have it now, you can get it through purchasing this product, this service,
Mm-hmm.
or you
Mm-hmm.
better get an extra
Accumulating. Mm-hmm.
job so that you can have these things and thereby be really alive. When
Mm-hmm.
liveness was the gift we got at the very beginning, and we just have to fight for it.
Yep.
Whew.
Well,
Yeah.
no big deal.
Put me in the river naked. Let's go skinny dipping. Um,
I mean, sounds great. Yeah. Also, I want to say I love your show and I'm glad you're doing it. And yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you.
doing this show in general. Like, it's awesome to have podcasts that I want to listen to. And that's why I started my first podcast is like, there's not any podcasts I want to listen to. And now there are, and such as yours. And I love the questions you ask of the people you have on and like just so good. So yeah, I
Thank
wanna
you. Thank you.
yeah.
I think I imagine it was in part inspired by the podcast you created and just, hearing another woman talking about the planet and like trying to live in magical and meaningful ways in a world that's always trying to separate us from nature, dehumanize us
Right.
and dehumanize
Mm-hmm.
the land and the animals. And I think there's a very old, we have this kind of like primitive fear. I don't know if it's primitive or not, but it's old anyway. But I think we also have this old memory of the kind like the life before where we did share and we did live in common spaces and we did not have to orient our entire lives around obtaining a currency that is a construct. Like we actually exchanged bread and shoes and we went for a walk in the forest and we had time for that. And our elders sat on the porch and they were cared for. And, I'm sure there were plagues and horrible smells and like all these things, but
Definitely some
um,
horrible smells.
yeah. but that some part of us like remembers that, and it's very
Hmm.
deep, and maybe we're not aware that it's there. It kind of like maybe awakens over time, but I think it feeds that ache of like, what's wrong with me? Why
Hmm.
can't I fit in this world? And I think it's because we have a
Hmm.
memory of another world
Yeah.
that
And this world
we
wasn't built for us to fit in.
right, right. It's built for you to work in and suffer
Hmm.
in.
And then to
Um,
shame yourself for not
yes.
fitting in and wondering, well, why? What is this impulse that I have? I mean, yeah, it's just this perfectly built system to keep perpetuating itself.
Yeah, you got to give it
Yeah.
uh credit, I guess, for being really good at its job.
Oh, it's ingenious. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to is it true that you worked in water sciences in the past? Did I
I
make that
have.
up?
Yes. Yeah. No. So I have a master's in soil science, and on my
Okay,
way to that, I took a detour where I thought I might do marine science, and so I did work with clam farms in the Chesapeake Bay.
cool.
So yeah, and I've just lived around water my whole life, most of my life. It's just I think it's such a it, water is life, right? This so I have done some marine science and um yeah, but then I went on land, kind of like Temperance here. I dipped my toe in, but
Mm,
then I stood on land.
okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Um, or I've found it admirable and interesting that you have like a science foundation around, earth biology, and your podcast honored that. I mean, it wasn't a science-y podcast per se. It was very much more like relational and magical and about, healing and all of that. Um, but since this card is so watery, I was just curious, like, if there's any water epiphany that came to you from that scientific work, or maybe it was just
Mm.
kind of a small piece in your journey.
Maybe not the science work, but I think just my personal relationship with
Mm,
water and the spirit of water over time has continued to refresh and brighten my soul and keep that little candle lit.
yeah,
Yeah. Especially those sunlight sparkles on water.
yeah.
They really,
That
I
really
mean,
does feel
just, yeah.
divine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you get me talking about water, we'll just be here for another
I know
couple
I'm
hours. So
tempted to like, there's so much threat to water now, and access to water,
I
and
know
drought
it's
as climate change happens.
unbelievable.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so
Mm-hmm.
critical.
Yeah.
Just a reminder
Yep.
to put some water out for the animals, y'all, because if you live in a
Mm.
city, it's hard to find. Um, well, tell me a little bit about what creativity means to you today, and maybe if that has anything to do with temperance, weave that in. But yeah, I'm curious about your creative life or your magical life or just how you are surviving capitalism right now.
Well, I also want to name that I am very resourced, have a lot of advantage, and I take advantage of that advantage by pushing those boundaries and exploring and then sharing what I've kind of found on those edges that maybe other people don't have the capacity or advantages to take that risk. I live my life in a much riskier way than most people would want to, um, where I think that my just right now creativity is is in connection with earth and spirit and the very tangible um, resources at my fingertips and bringing like creating allowing my life to be created, not through just me saying this is what I'm going to create of it, but like I feel like I am this instrument of collaboration with life and creation itself to explore these edges of possibility for the sake of having them in the collective consciousness and potentially modeling them and maybe offering a hand to those who'd like to walk that path. And that's thrilling to me. Like my heart's beating. And in that, I have my small moments of creativity of like watercoloring. There's water again.
Mm.
And I have been filming and photographing at the farm all summer. I'm now collaborating with them to produce their private TV series.
Cool.
So it sounds fancier than it is, but it's literally me filming the founder and making little mini episodes that their subscribers pay to watch, and it's so fun, and I love it because it's part of that modeling of, okay, what are sort of alternative approaches to how we function day to day, how we exist in the world in relationship with the earth and with each other and with our creativity and with the difficult stuff. Um, that's been so nourishing. And I think that, I just want to continue exploring that and how people are surviving, capitalism and surviving the difficult things that we're facing and not just surviving, but tending to their aliveness. And I think I want to keep documenting and sharing that because I think having that even modeled, having those stories told and having these different ways of living, just like Joe Hollis of the
Yeah.
podcast that inspired you, I think just having those out there, they really do plant seeds in people's minds and bodies and spirits that I don't know where they're going to grow, but that's just kind of how I'm sprinkling water on the world, I think, is just continuing to pursue those invitations that arise as they arise and letting myself be that kind of instrument. And yeah, having fun when I can.
I love that. I love it so much. And yeah, what you're talking about, what I hear in all of this is like that creativity for you, of course, can take form and artistic expression in film or painting or any number of things, but that sort of umbrella over that is this sensibility of life as a creative act. And that, like Temperance reminds us, there is something we are co-creating with. We are not just individuals with our willpower and our goals and wishes and dreams, like walk, like carrying the boat up the mountain. There's a way that we can co-create with something that I think once, I had I don't know if it was, I'm sorry, I certainly was not the first person to have this thought by any means, but there was something big and beautiful for me when I made this connection between, okay, what we're living in is the creation. Like all of this was created, the capitalism too, as it happens. But the earth, the grass, the trees, the birds, all these species, the way the water flows, the landscapes, the mountains, the cultures, like that's the creation. And so creativity is like just working with the creation, with the creative impulse that created all of that, and then still runs through us to do all kinds of different things that are either material or ephemeral or just like a sensibility. And I guess what I hear you saying is like that I love so much is this orientation toward creativity as a life, a way of life, and creating a life that reflects your aliveness, as you've been saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I think aliveness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, you know, the first gift we were given here. And yeah, it does seem like our job and our responsibility and our battle some days to protect that and protect the space where it can thrive and enjoy. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
I would say the words that come to mind are tend and mend. Like tend to
mm,
that and mend the ways it's been disrupted.
yeah, that's so much more
Mhm.
gentle than like fix and
T-
re-
Temperance.
repair. Yeah. And I think the kind of language of like, I imagine maybe the common when back when there were the commons is like things would be tended to and old things would be
Right.
mended. Um,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and now we just replace everything and throw it away. And that sucks. So I think as we talk to kind of like share with our listeners, if you're pulling the temperance card out there a lot, I think some of the messages we might offer folks might be to tend and mend to your aliveness, to notice where things are flowing and where things aren't, to consider balance, to consider your nervous system. What else would you tell a person who's
Yeah.
getting this card?
Remember, you're operating within a system that wants you to believe that it's your fault that you can't win at an impossible game. And with that, you know, offering yourself the invitation of tempering, uh, tempering that self shame, self blame, and as your capacity allows, tending to what does bring you more aliveness and less guilt. Because that's a journey.
Yeah. And as you said, importantly, it's gradual.
Yeah,
It's not a quick
no,
fix. It's a
no. That's another construct of the system.
right, exactly. It's lying all the time.
Ugh.
Um, well, Natalie, thank you so much for this conversation and for everything that you shared. And I think one other thing to highlight, if it's not already clear to everyone, is like make and create. I don't know, you said it before, but like what excites you
Tend and
because
mend.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
no clue what kind of impact it can have. And it's really exciting and meaningful to me to have once been, you know, driving around the streets of Austin, just like looking at all the concrete and the parking lots and the cars and trucks and like, ugh, but listening to Earth speak and being like, yes, 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 to, you know, having this conversation with you. So, um, that feels beautiful and I'm grateful. And I just want to give you a moment if you want to invite folks to connect with you or work with you. What would you like them to know, or where should they
Mm.
go?
Thanks. Yeah. And I just really, really want to highlight that look at like how beautiful it is that I followed some impulse and it inspired you. And now you're here allowing me to explore whatever impulse is alive in me now. And we're, helping amplify and broadcast that. Like this is not about competition and it can
Yeah,
so easily feel like that, but in this field I feel like no, how do we not competition, not anytime someone's been inspired by something I've done and they start a podcast or start a thing or do a thing or even like copy my visual style or do anything, I'm like yes, like I want this amplified not for my personal ego but because like this is so mending, tending and mending, and we get to amplify it. And now you're helping feed me as it's so fun. It's so cool. It's like such a cool. We get to create. We're rerouting that river into our own systems here, our own communities, and so yeah, I work with people who want to, you know, tend and mend their nervous systems so that they can experience more aliveness. And in the past couple, I'm trained in this. I'm trained in somatic experiencing, which is a modality for working with the nervous system. And I've been applying it through the lens of marketing and business and helping people put themselves out there, put their projects out there. But this summer has really shown me too that it's really I'm really here for people who do want to tend and mend and create more capacity for that aliveness in themselves and for perhaps a project they're bringing to life. But if they just want to feel that aliveness in themselves, yeah. And I'm really drawn lately to working with older women. I recently had a call with someone who was 78. I've been hanging out with 80-year-olds this summer. I'm like, older women are where it's at.
Yeah.
I'll work with anyone, but like, just there is so much beautiful possibility within. Oh God, that it's just I'm thrilled by it. So yeah, if you want to tend and mend and experience your aliveness, hit me up, natalie.net, have a free connection call. And even though the language there is all still about marketing, I'm currently exploring what that invitation might look like in a more broader sense. So just ignore any questions that don't pertain to you.
Beautiful.
But yeah, natalie.net. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we will put
Yeah.
that in the show notes, of course, so people can easily find you. And yeah, I encourage it. I think working with your nervous system can do way more than talk therapy can do. And not that you shouldn't do talk therapy as well, but
Right.
it's
Do it
such,
all. If you have the resources, do it.
yes. And as you said, the nervous system is running things morning, noon, and night. And so the more we kind of work with that part of the self, we just more freedom, more capacity opens up all over the place. So highly recommend. And thank you
Mm-hmm.
for doing this work. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for the work that you have done in the past. um, yeah, I'm glad you're
Yeah.
alive and fighting the system with us because we need it, especially
Thank
now.
you. Right. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your work. It's freaking awesome.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Natalie for coming on the show. I hope there was something in our conversation that opened a portal for you, opened up some new thoughts, ideas, realizations, desires. And I hope you get to fold that into your life in an interesting and beautiful way. If you're interested in working with Natalie, you can go to her website, natalie.net, where you can book a free curiosity call with her. And I just really appreciate you listening and being here, being part of this journey. We're heading into 2025 with a lot of unknowns, a lot of big questions, a lot of trepidation, perhaps, around how the world will be changing and what that will mean for us, the people we care about, and the people we don't even know, but who we also care about because humanity. So we'll continue to explore the big questions here on this show as we continue to tend to our creativity and our magic. If you want to stay more connected, come to the Typewriter Tarot website, typewritertarot.com. Sign up for the newsletter. It'll be there for you. We're here for you. If you need more support than these conversations, come hang out. Wishing you a beautiful entry into the new year, and I'll be talking to you more very soon.